They say the forest holds its breath when night begins to settle, as if something ancient stirs beneath the branches. Locals whisper that the trees seem to lean closer after sundown, stretching their shadows into long, crooked lines. And somewhere between those lines they speak of a figure, tall, pale, silent, waiting in the stillness. A presence with no face, yet somehow always watching. They call him Slender Man.
What? Sally, cut the camera! Sally!
No one agrees on where the legend began. Some claim it started with scattered reports in forgotten towns, where children vanished without a sound. Others insist it's far older, born from warnings etched into brittle journals or muttered in old campfires that burned out decades ago. There are those who say the name was never spoken, it was simply understood. A shape glimpsed in the corner of the eye, a silhouette too thin, too tall, too still to be human, a shadow that did not move with the wind, only with intention. People describe him differently, but the fear is always the same. A white hollow figure without features, arms that seem too long, stretching in unnatural ways. A dark suit that never wrinkles or fades, as though the cloth itself is part of something living. Some swear his appearance is a warning, others believe it is a promise, and every version ends with the same chilling certainty. Once someone sees him, something inside them shifts, as if a piece of their mind is no longer theirs. In quiet towns, parents once told their children not to wander past the tree line after dusk. They spoke of strange echoes, soft footsteps that matched their own, whispers with no speaker, sudden coldness even in warm seasons. A few old families recall finding marks carved into bark, long vertical scratches too even and deliberate to be the work of an animal. They claimed the forest tried to tell them something, but they never learned what. Newspapers used to print the disappearances in small paragraphs buried deep inside the pages. A missing child, a hiker who didn't return, a traveler seen heading into the woods never to be spotted again. But the reports were always vague, drained of detail, as if the writers themselves were afraid to look too closely. Some locals say the articles became shorter over time, not because fewer people vanished, but because fewer dared to investigate. Yet the legend spread, moving quietly from town to town like a cold draft through an old house. People whispered of sightings, tall silhouette at the edge of a playground, pale figure behind a row of trees, a shape standing perfectly still on a fog-covered trail. The stories never needed names, they never needed dates. Only the picture of something impossibly tall, watching from a distance that never felt distant enough. Those who spoke of him often did so in hushed tones, glancing over their shoulders, as though the very act of mentioning the legend invited his attention. Some refused to say his name at all, believing it carried power, believing it might draw him closer. A few claimed that the forest grew quieter when his presence was near, as if birds, insects, and even the wind fell silent in fear. And so the legend survived, not because people saw him often, but because they felt him, felt the weight of unseen eyes in lonely woods, felt the chill of being observed by something without a face, felt the stories tightening around them like mist that never fully lifted. They say there are places where the trees are unnaturally tall, growing straight and thin like 1,000 pale limbs reaching upward. In those places, people walk faster. They stay close to each other. They never linger, never stare too long into the gaps between trunks, because some claim he hides in those spaces, not approaching, not retreating, simply waiting. The legend of Slender Man is not told as a single story. It is a quiet fear shared across countless voices, an unspoken understanding that something tall and silent may be lingering just beyond the last line of trees, and whether he is a warning or a watcher, no one can say. They only know that once the forest grows too quiet, it is already too late. Across scattered towns and fading rural roads, the stories began to multiply, drifting like cold air through communities that rarely spoke to one another. Some claim the rumors followed the forest themselves, moving wherever the tree line stretched far enough to swallow sound. Others say the fear spread even without witnesses, as if the legend drifted on its own, seeking new places to root itself. But the stories always surfaced the same way, quietly, hesitantly, with that familiar tremor in the voice of whoever dared to speak first. Old watchmen tell of strange nights when the fog rolled in too quickly, drowning the world in white. They remember hearing a soft, slow tapping echo through the trees, steady as a heartbeat. When they shone their lanterns toward the sound, they found no footprints, no branches moving, only a long shadow cast by something standing just beyond the reach of the light. Some say the silhouette never moved, even when they turned away. Others remember it growing longer, as though it stretched itself across the ground like a dark vein crawling toward them. Hikers recall feeling followed for miles, sensing a shape pacing them at the edge of vision. They describe the same unsettling details, a pale figure blending seamlessly into the trunks, a face that wasn't a face, a tall outline that seemed to shrink and expand with the shifting mist. Some reported losing chunks of time, arriving at familiar paths with no memory of how they got there. Others claim they heard their own name carried through the branches, though no human voice could echo that sharply. In towns near old forests, children would play games, daring each other to stare between the trees at dusk. Some returned with stories of a tall figure standing deep inside the shadows, too straight, too smooth, too silent. A few refused to return to the woods at all, telling their parents that the thin man watched them. Parents dismissed it as imagination, but many admitted later that their homes felt colder for weeks, as if something unseen had followed their children back. Stranger incidents surfaced in local archives. One brittle report described a family who found symbols carved into their barn, long vertical lines almost parallel, etched with unnatural precision. Another spoke of a hiker's camera discovered near a collapsed tree. Every photo on the device showed only empty forest except for one, a pale, blurred column rising behind the branches. The official notes dismissed it as damaged film, but those who saw the image refused to forget it. Travelers passing through remote highways tell of glimpsing a figure standing at the tree line, facing the road though it had no face to see with. Some claimed the figure was motionless for hours, visible in the same spot both at dusk and at dawn. Drivers who stopped to look reported strange sensations, ringing in their ears, pressure in their skulls, the sudden urge to leave immediately. A few said they saw thin, dark shapes unfurling behind the figure, like tendrils stretching out to meet the darkness. Even those who never ventured into the woods began to feel the weight of the legend. People inside their homes told of seeing something tall pass by their windows in the reflection of a mirror or the shimmer of a darkened screen. Dogs refused to go near certain rooms. Streetlights flickered when the night grew too quiet. Some families moved without explanation, leaving behind houses that remained empty for years. Authorities tried to calm the growing rumors, insisting there was no evidence of anything unnatural. But residents whispered of investigators who resigned abruptly, or files that vanished from storage, or officers who returned from forest searches pale, shaken, and unwilling to speak. They said it wasn't fear of what they found, it was fear of what followed them back. No single story could define the legend. Each one was only a fragment, a stray piece of something larger. But together, the incidents formed a pattern, a presence that seemed to weave itself through every sighting and every disappearance. A tall figure, a faceless watcher, a silence that swallowed sound. And the more the rumors spread, the more people claimed that the forest themselves began to change, growing darker, quieter, older, as if something hidden within them was waking. Long before the name Slender Man drifted into modern whispers, older records hinted at a presence with the same unnatural form. Historians studying forgotten settlements found symbols carved into wooden beams, tall, thin shapes without faces, their limbs stretched far beyond human proportions. Some markings were so old the wood around them had rotted away, yet the carved lines remained smooth and clean, untouched by time. Scholars argued over interpretation, but locals insisted the symbols were warnings, not artwork. In crumbling archives, buried beneath dust and mold, faint references to a pale watcher appear in journals from explorers who documented untouched forests centuries ago. They wrote of feeling pursued by something keeping its distance, something that made compasses spin and shadows bend oddly. One account, written with trembling ink, described waking in the night to find all the trees around the camp facing inward, as though the trunks themselves had turned. No footprints were found, Yet the writer swore he saw an elongated silhouette standing among the branches before dawn. Folklorists dug deeper, uncovering tales from villages that no longer exist. These stories rarely used names, but the figure was always the same, tall, silent, faceless. In one crumbling manuscript, an elder spoke of a hollow guardian, said to appear before great misfortune, lingering at the edges of farmland or near rivers swollen from storm. Another community told of a forest sentinel that lured children away with quiet gestures, leading them between the trees where the light grew thin and cold. Some believed it protected the woods. Others believed it fed on those who wandered too far. Archaeologists found strange drawings inside caves, near regions where disappearances were once frequent. The paintings showed stick-like figures towering above groups of people, long arms stretching downward as if to claim them. A few drawings included dark lines emerging from the figure's back, lines that spread like roots or tendrils. The pigments used for these lines were unlike any known material in the region, as though the substance itself came from somewhere beyond the natural world. As researchers pieced together these fragments, a disturbing pattern emerged. The legend did not belong to a single culture or era. Variants of the same figure appeared in distant locations, separated by oceans and centuries. How villages with no contact shared the same descriptions remains unexplained. Some argue the stories represent a universal fear, a shared nightmare that humanity carries. But others believe the consistency means something far more unsettling, that the figure was real, moving silently through time just as it moved through forests. Old maps show places marked with simple straight lines instead of names. These symbols often appeared near regions eventually abandoned, without explanation. Entire communities vanished, leaving only empty structures overrun by vines. No artifacts of struggle or disease were found, only quiet homes with doors left open, as though people stepped outside and never returned. In those places, trees grew tall and unnaturally straight, forming corridors of pale trunks that seemed too uniform to be shaped by nature alone. Some archives mention a terrible phenomenon known as the thinning, where the air itself felt stretched or pulled, leaving residents disoriented for days. During these periods, shadows lengthened unnaturally, and the horizon appeared warped as though viewed through distorted glass. Many believed this was a sign that the faceless figure had passed through the region, bending reality in its wake. After each episode, families reported missing livestock, lost travelers or children who claimed they heard someone calling them from the woods. A few documents written in secret by those who dared to investigate describe an even darker truth. The figure was not merely seen, it was felt. People reported dreams of endless white forests where a tall silhouette waited motionless among the trees. These dreams intensified before disappearances, as though the figure reached into their minds long before reaching their bodies. Scholars tried to dismiss these accounts, but many noted that the dreams occurred in individuals who had never spoken to one another. The deeper the research went, the more the legend resisted explanation. Every clue led to centuries-old warnings, every warning hinted at an ancient intelligence, and every story felt less like folklore and more like documentation. Something patient, something watching, something older than the forests themselves. In the end, the archives revealed no origins, only traces, as though the figure existed before stories, before settlements, before memory itself. And through every era, the same pattern repeated: sightings, silence, vanishings, and the lingering sense that the faceless presence was always just beyond the final tree. They say there comes a moment when the legend no longer feels like a tale, when the stories grow too synchronized, too heavy, too close. A moment when the whispers sharpen into something colder, and every shadow starts to resemble the shape described across centuries. In many regions, that moment arrived quietly. No loud warnings, no sudden panic. Just a slow shift in the air, as if the world itself held its breath. Residents living near old forests began noticing strange distortions in the landscape. Trees seemed taller, straighter, almost unnaturally aligned. Paths that people walked for years twisted into unfamiliar routes, looping back toward the woods regardless of direction. Travelers spoke of losing their sense of distance, feeling as though the forest stretched farther than space should allow. Locals called it the stretching, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. Nightfall grew heavier, pressing down like a presence thick and suffocating. The silence deepened in ways that made people glance over their shoulders, expecting to see someone standing there. Some described hearing faint rustling behind them, though no wind stirred the leaves. Others reported glimpsing tall shadows that seemed to glide between the trees rather than walk. Their movements were soundless, effortless, more like drifting than stepping. Families began waking to find their doors slightly open, though they insisted they locked them. Windows left untouched suddenly bore long vertical smears, as if something tall dragged its fingers across the glass. Some homes had marks carved into their wooden frames, thin straight lines too deliberate to be scratches, too clean to be accidental. Neighbors stopped asking questions, afraid of the answers. Reports grew darker. A hunter returning from the woods claimed he saw a pale figure standing perfectly still in a clearing, so tall it seemed to brush the lowest branches. He looked away for a heartbeat, and when he turned back, the figure was closer, far closer, yet still unmoving. He left everything behind, rifle and pack included, and never stepped into the forest again. Days later, he moved out of town without a word. Children spoke of dreams they couldn't explain. Dreams of endless corridors of white trees. Dreams of tall shadows hovering behind them. A few refused to sleep at all, saying the figure in their dreams didn't stay in dreams for long. Parents tried to soothe them, but even adults began waking with the same visions. Dark shapes lingering just out of reach, stretching their limbs through fog that felt alive. Some roads fell nearly silent. Travelers who once passed through without thought began avoiding routes near wooded areas. Those who dared to drive at night described seeing a tall silhouette standing at the tree line, too slim to be human, positioned as if listening to the engine's hum. A few claimed the figure stayed in view for miles, never stepping forward, never stepping back, just gliding through the trees alongside their vehicle. Then came the disappearances, not sudden, frantic events, but quiet absences. People simply failed to return from errands, from walks, from moments of stepping outside to get some air. Their last known locations always shared the same detail: the edge of the forest, the border where light from houses faded and the tall trunks began. Search teams combed the woods but found nothing. No struggle, no footprints, only the unnatural stillness that made even seasoned rescuers hurry back to camp. The local authorities tried to reassure the public, yet their voices carried uncertainty. Some investigators refused to go near the woods after sundown. Others reported their radios malfunctioning, picking up faint static that resembled slow rhythmic breathing. One officer described seeing the trees subtly bending, as though tilting toward something moving between them. He resigned the next morning. And then, the stories say, the forest itself began to feel aware. Those who walked near it sensed eyes on them, though the figure was never visible. The air grew colder at random, pockets of icy stillness lingering beside warm summer breezes. Even on bright days, the spaces between trunks seemed darker than they should be, holding a thickness that swallowed sight. The legend reached its final form not with a singular event, but with countless small signs merging into one heavy truth. The presence was no longer a distant rumor. It was here, lingering, spreading, growing more confident as fear deepened. Locals whispered that the figure had stepped fully into this world, no longer confined to ancient tales or forgotten warnings. Some believed he watched from every quiet corner of the forest, waiting for those who wandered too close. Others felt he no longer needed to wait at all. And now they say once the night grows too still, once the shadows stretch too long, once the world feels slightly thinner than before, he is already near. Tall, silent, faceless, standing just beyond where the light ends, watching with a patience older than memory, waiting for the moment when someone finally notices him. They claim the true horror of the legend is not seeing him. It is realizing how long he has been there, just out of sight, waiting in the quiet dark.